Here we are. Okay, hi everybody. I'm also just going to take this opportunity to just publicly thank you both for trusting me. Just a stranger writing to you out of the blue to be a part of this project, so thank you. You're both larger than life to me and to so many people, so yeah, it just means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's so much to talk about, but I wanted to start with something that I heard you say, Imara, when we were listening to the collage.
How did you start with me?
Because it just happened. I mean, when you say iconic things, you know, the people pay attention. But you were saying, in order to live, you have to imagine a future. And that just summed up so much for me. And I was wondering if you can talk about that a little bit and also how that ties into your work at TransLash, because that to me is doing that work of imagining the future.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your vision that you brought to this track and to this entire project. And thank you to Red Hot and Chili for that many, many, many times over. You know, I think that the thing that art does at a particular time like this is to affirm our basic humanity in ways that we can't always articulate and shouldn't have to articulate and can't articulate, right? Because we are more than our bodies. And so just thank you to everyone. You know, I think that one of the things that keeps people going is the prospect that tomorrow can be different. And that maybe if tomorrow can't be different, then the tomorrow after the tomorrow can't be different. And if that's not different, then the tomorrow after the tomorrow after the tomorrow will be different. Which means that our concepts of possibility, which is what the future actually represents, right? Because we don't actually know what's going to happen. So what we are doing is we are moving forward with the sense of possibility. Is that the future then, as it's our concept of what's possible, that's essential to being able to move forward. The ability that you can do something that you haven't done, express something that you haven't expressed, manifest something that you haven't manifested before. And a part of that is the ability to be able to envisage what that thing is. Right? It's not only to have possibility, but it is for you to be able to fill in that possibility for yourself. And that's actually what propels us through life. And so consequently, when you think about it, the idea of the future, the idea of what's possible and your ability to be able to move into that possible space, your own idea of what that is essential to what it means to be alive. And I think that that is one of the reasons why there's so much work right now going into eliminating the idea that we're possible, right? That we can exist. Because if you take that away, then you essentially take away people's ability to be themselves. And so for me at TransLash, as I said in the track, which I didn't even remember that I said that until I heard myself say that, and because I recognized my own voice, I was like, well, I must have said it. Yeah, it's not that good yet, but give it a few months. That for me, as I said there, that I realized that like a part of the holes in our media is that basic affirmation of who we are, and the basic affirmation that we have existed, we do exist, and we will exist. And that those three things together are what make us who we are. And that if the representation is of limited possibility, of limited past, of limited present, then our futures, our ability to thrive will be limited as well. And so one of the reasons why I created TransLash and why we continue to try to paint on as broad a canvas as possible is for that very reason, right? To keep affirming, to keep moving forward, to keep the idea of possibility alive in every single way. And not to talk about us as limited people or limited beings, right? I think that there's no shortage of trans representation, but it's all throughout history, but it's all terribly limited. Right? It's all about limiting the idea of who you can be to these very narrow things that are either tragic or comical or ridiculable, but I mean caricatures, right? Not actually fleshed out human beings. So I think that we want to keep a big vision for ourselves. We want to keep a big vision of what's possible because that is what is going to allow us to survive and to be able to have that future in actuality.
Thank you for that, Imara. Ceyenne, I'm wondering if you can also talk about what that means for you and your work at G.L.I.T.S, because just so everybody remembers, we're also raising money for G.L.I.T.S here today.
My work sounds like that machine that just did the sound. It's hard. I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass, Liz. One of the hardest things you can do is take care of something so close to you. That is our community. I have no other reason to be out here fighting. Fighting for us, fighting for survival, fighting for tomorrow in the hopes that tomorrow's promised to all of us. Every day I wake up angry and mad. I've broken 2 TVs out of anger. As soon as it could be 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. I'll turn on the news, hear some shit, bang! I'm gonna have to be smarter, break a perfume bottle or something. But the reality is that every day we're being targeted. So this work is about not only education, but housing, sex workers. I'm like limitless when it comes to what I will do to help people. And I think, I am not my work, my staff are the work. I'm just the visionary that came up with this idea that we can really save each other. And the best way to do it is by doing it, not to lay on the sidelines talking about I wish I could. If I could get my black ass up and get off of drugs and I still smoke marijuana and every now and then a bump, but in all transparency. If you're not real to your own, you can't be real to the world. What I've seen and what I've learned, and every time we get hit, and we've been hit for decades, we've been getting blindsided by one dick after another dick after another dick, and now an orange dick twice. I will not be screwed by this motherfucker a third time. So, this work is about helping change that narrative. How do we spin the politics against us right now into a positive? And that's pulling everybody together, not individuals, not one part, not black, white, Chinese, Japanese, Spanish, Hispanic, Dominican, all of us in the same pot fighting that one idiot. We have to do it. We have to find a way. And my staff always thinks I'm crazy because I force them to do things they don't want to do, like talk out loud. If you can work for me, you can talk for me. You should be able to pick up the phone and answer any question anybody asks. Reporters, community, anything. Why? Because you work for me. I'm the blueprint. You are the person that actually push the pen and do the work. It is your job to get them housing. It is your job to figure out what aftercare looks like when they get out of jail. It is your job to go into the jail and make sure people are okay. So it is my job to see this, to see it as a vision and then push it, to poke the people that don't like being poked in the ass. Because then you're able to wake them up in a way. People think that we're in this society of wokeness. People need to get the fuck up. And I think if we haven't seen it in what's rolling out, we all need to be awake. Stay awake. I sleep with one eyelid open. If I had eyelashes on, I would look like a spider. But the reality is that we can't blink. We got to really be intentional about what this work looks like for the next 4 years and what we're going to strive for and what mutual aid is going to look like. What does parenting going to look like for our community? When we got a man saying that he's the right to control our bodies and our wishes and our thoughts, how do we combat that? I say at least 1,000 trans people should have at least 1,000 trans babies, and we'll work it out. You can't get rid of us. But in all reality, we are facing the most heinous act of prejudice and retardation I've ever seen. I don't use that word much, but this guy here, there's something wrong. And it's playing out. It's our job to play back, but play back smartly, intentionally, like in a way that's kind of rubbing it in his face, kind of like a blowjob without the head. I don't even know how does that work? But I think we, I don't know. I do think that we have to be creative. Somebody said, well, you know, why is sex work so important to you? And I had to say, that's how I started this, sweetie. I sucked the dick. I mean, I took sex worker money and turned it into people money that turned it into people power. That's what we're supposed to do. Your assets are all sitting here. You are the assets to all of this, the blueprints to what this work looks like. I'm going to be a hoe until the day I die. I'm convinced. It's written in the stars. I'm going to be a universal hoe till the day I die. But I think we all have the potential right now to be universal hoes and do it for our community. Challenge everybody around us. If there's a cis person that look at you crooked, get paid. Get paid. Take every goddamn dollar you can. But think about what the future is if we demand out of them what they're demanding out of us. Everybody'd be screwed. This whole world would be a rainbow, and I don't even know what color I would be in a rainbow. But I do think we have the power to shift the narrative of negativity into the narrative of hold'em, into the narrative of giving in life.
Absolutely. I want to come back to something you just said, Ceyenne, which was you were talking about how anybody at G.L.I.T.S can pick up the phone and be a spokesperson for the organization. I just wanted to shout out that being a model of sustainability, that it's beyond you, it's about the community, what everybody can do. And I wanted to ask who you both look to and who your models are and who you learn from. I know Miss Major is someone for you, Ceyenne. I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about that.
Miss Major's a mom. She's different from the work. She will curse you out. Her nurse just walked in the door. Where are you? Right there. Her nurse just walked in the door. And if you ever get to hug, embrace, and know this salty old lady, is she salty? Woo, God bless you. It's different from the advocacy shit. She don't give a fuck about that. She cares more about me being her child and her parenting. I thought my mother was something. This woman here wants it when she wants it, when she wants it, and she wants nothing else. And that's commendable. To be 84 years old and still out here and trying to talk to the community. She said, if I'm gonna die on that side of the work. I don't want to die in a retirement home I want to die doing the work. I'm going to die talking to these babies and standing up for these babies. And sometimes I go, but Ma, your titties are down there by your feet. And she goes, I don't care. You want to hold them? She is a force, and she's not like that You know, I would like to have an advocate mom. Flawless Sabrina was my advocate mom. Major's like a mom. She's kind of a little salty, but there's a lesson here. There's always something to be told, even if you don't want to know it. She's going to show you a sign of you in her that you don't want to see or know. And to be 84 and have outlived all of this shit. She was there. She was there at the Stonewall age when you had to have on the 3 pieces. She jumped a fence, wig, everything off. Now, thank God Miss Major's a smart person because she also knew a dumpster very close that she changed outfits to get away. She likes using the word abscond. And let me tell y'all, we are all going to have to learn that word, abscond. Get ready and practice. Practice in the mirror. Absconding. Because we're going to have to fucking do that. And you know, in the eyes of a mom, I called her, she's an asshole. I called her when that person won. I won't say his name, but you know, he's funny looking in orange. When he won, I called her and she said, well, we've seen this ugly shit before, but what we gonna do? We're gonna get up, we're gonna fight, we're gonna be resilient, and in 4 years, we never gotta do this again. But we have to be intentional keeping somebody like that from ever getting in this position. That means we have to politicize our community. This is a learning lesson here, motherfuckers. This is the tool. Right now, we're living the test. We're gonna have to learn how to abscond. Repeat after me, abscond, abscond. Because we're gonna have to do some funny shit for some funny things to help people live amazing lives.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Ceyenne. And Imara, for you, I know that you've spoken about Tourmaline, for example, and her work with Marsha, like thinking of a younger generation. That's sort of, you know, thinking about history as a way of trying to find a way to the future. And I'm curious also who you are looking to, older than you, who your models are or were.
You young.
I was like, I don't know who's old. We'd have to sketch it out. I mean, I think I would say I would divide it into 2 things. I think one of the things that is really amazing about this moment is that there are so many amazing trans people. Like, there's no shortage of amazing people in our community, and I continue to be inspired and motivated and learn from all of my peers, like the people who are still here, like Ceyenne, and so many other people. There's Tourmaline, and there's Chase, and there's Philippe Cunningham, and there's Andrew. Like, there's like, I could go on and on and on and on and on. Like, there's absolutely no shortage of amazing people in our community. And I think that, like, we have to hold on to that. The second thing is, and a lot of times the people that we don't know. So for instance, like the former, he doesn't work for them anymore, but there's a former trans Child Protective Service agent in Austin who took the first case when Governor Abbott made the fact that if you are a straight couple and you affirm your trans child, a cause for the state to take that child and enter into foster care. One of the first people to take the very first case was a trans man by the name of Morgan in Texas, and he was doing so in a way to try to prevent the very first kid from being taken away from their family, succeeded, and to provide a model for how all of the standards that you would have to meet in order to do that in the future. Didn't fail at that, but I mean, that person has a tremendous amount of courage, right? And no one in here probably knows that he exists. And there are so many of those people, and so many of us. Cecilia, I miss Cecilia so much. I miss Cecilia so much. I miss Cecilia so much in this moment. I think that her voice and her vision and her leadership is so vacant right now in a way that I feel. I know you feel it too. and as I wrote about her when she passed, I was like, given her skill set in a world where their sky was the limit, she would have been like governor and a Tony-winning actress. Like, she actually had that capability. Like, she was that capable as a person. So Cecilia, I miss, and I've been thinking about, we just actually did a TransLash podcast interview, plug, that comes out on the 20th, so this week, about Black trans history. And they're, again, amazing Black trans archivists, people that you probably have never heard of, who are doing work on Black trans historical figures. And two of them one person you probably have heard of, the other person maybe not. One is Imara Jones, who was not only a sex worker, but also a kind of what's the other?
Beefsteak Pete?
No.
Yeah.
What?
That was Mary Jones's sex worker name.
Well, that, and then like a couple of other names, like, because she ended up going to jail. So she was born in 1790 and became in New Orleans and made her way to New York and became a sex worker, known by several different names, and lived in a community of trans women down in the Bowery, believe it or not, and insistent on constantly being herself. And she says that in her court records, like whenever she's put on trial. And they're like, well, when did you start being like this? And she's like, well, I've always been like this. This is actually who I am as a person, right? Born in 1790, put on trial in New York in the 1830s. And not only was that, but also was kind of their version of a tabloid Instagram celebrity, like, that constantly was in tabloids and well-known to community. And just the courage to be yourself. And if there is an African-American woman who was born during the time of enslavement in the South, made her way to New York only 15 years after slavery ended in New York, and found life and found community and found several relationships here with men and women and people who identified at the time as non-binary, then we're gonna be okay. There's actually there's no way that we're not gonna be okay, right? The second person is Frances Thompson, who is a Black trans woman in Memphis, Tennessee, survived a race riot, and testified before Congress and was one of the leading voices for the establishment of the 14th Amendment in the United States, which was the amendment that gave Black men the right to vote afterwards. Also a person who lived in community and was known to her community and had the courage to speak up and to be herself, again, at a time when we would think that that was not allowable. So I think that we have to let go of the idea of the lives that we were supposed to have. We have to let go of our expectations of society, and we have to realize that sometimes in order to be alive, you have to fight, and that's okay. And that the way that we are actually here is because people who lived in far worse circumstances at far worse times did that. And so because we are here, we actually owe that to everyone who else comes behind us.
Yeah, thank you for that. I don't know how to even ask this question, but I guess it's just a heavy time. I think everybody feels very exhausted and very spent, and it's been heavy for a while. I think for some people, there's a sense of like new heaviness. And I think it's important to kind of root what's going on in history and to know that a lot of this is not new. And I'm just curious for both of you if this moment feels different from other moments that you've lived through, or that you feel like we'll need new tactics, or do you think that the tactics that you have been using and that you know your community have been using are the ones that we need to be falling back on?
Why did you turn to me? I was hoping I didn't have to go first. So I think a couple of things. I think, of course, this feels different. I mean, You're in a disintegrating democracy in real time that is trying to turn into a techno-fascist state, using trans people as both the way to expand support for that and to try out all the techniques that they'll export to the rest of society. How does that not feel new? Like, I mean, I don't understand like how that can't feel new. I mean, we already heard Kyans just say that, right? Like, this feels new. Like, it's the same, but it's a whole different thing, you know? Elon Musk, sucking up all of this information about everyone in the room, and then beginning to, have the ability to aggregate that data and to compare different data sets and see if anyone has ever changed anything about themselves, name or gender marker, and then to segregate all those people on a likely trans list. That feels new to me. I don't, so yeah. And that's why it feels terrible, because it is terrible. Right. Like, it feels terrible because it's terrible. It feels like we are in a, dystopian branch timeline from a timeline that felt okay, because we are. Right? Like, all of those things are real. We have to root ourselves in the reality of the moment. Right? All of those things are real, and we'll have to figure out both things, old and new, to combat them, right? Like, there are things that already were named, like that we will have to relearn old skills, right? So for example, someone was telling me in a techno-fascist state, I'm gonna get a prop. In a techno-fascist state, this is not your friend. This is not your friends at all. There's nothing about this that is good for you. Nothing. And I could go on and on about that. If we want to come back to that at some point, I can go on and on and on. But there's nothing about that that's good. You think it's good, and we've all been coaxed to believe that it is a device of empowerment, but it is the exact opposite. So many people have been pushed into radical movements because they would watch a series of funny videos and then they would insert one that would be QAnon, right? And then what you're doing is actually slowly being acculturated into a culture of extremism, and you don't even know it. But you think that it's fun because it's in an algorithm and you control the algorithm and you're just watching these funny videos, for example. So one of the things that we have to learn is we have to learn analog shit. And we're digital people. We're digital people who have to learn analog shit, which means that there are things that our grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents would know better how to navigate a terrain like this better than we would. Someone was telling me, I was talking a couple weeks ago with an organizer talking about the Underground Railroad and how they ran a massive nationwide absconding effort to move people. I paid attention, I like school. Absconding effort to move, people from the South across hundreds of miles and across two borders. And they did it all with a form of communication and signaling and the creation of a nationwide network to the extent that we haven't totally figured it out yet. We don't know how they did it. And we're supposedly smarter, and we're supposedly, more intelligent, and we live in the new age, but yet there were people 150 years ago who figured out how to move these people across these vast differences using signals and quilts, using hats, various hats, all types of things that we don't know how to do. Well, we better learn. We gotta start figuring that stuff out, right? And we have to break out of the isolation that the four corners of this thing puts upon us. And it is being in places like this, right? Learning to be more in groups of people that are small, that will figure out what to do and link up with other groups of people who were small, and then figure out ways of moving and being. Like, that's actually how you get through a techno-fascist state. You do not get through it with these devices. And so one of the things that I keep reminding myself is that that I don't know, but there are people who came before me who do know, who have a sense of how to do this. And we better start really digging into that and really digging into that history and respecting that history and not dismissing that history if we want to create a future for ourselves that's worthy. And I think more immediately about the fact of my parents. You know, my parents, for the first, 17, 18 years of their life, grew up in apartheid. They grew up in the segregated South, which was an authoritarian regime. As a matter of fact, I don't think that people know that, for example, the Alabama state constitution was the model for the South African apartheid constitution, right? And the reason why is because in places like Alabama, they figured out the cocktail of laws and culture that you needed in order for a minority to rule a majority. And so when South Africa was looking around the world and we're like, well, where is this happening and where can we just basically cut and paste what to do, they went to the American South. That's how my parents grew up. So that means that like I am one generation away from that. And in many ways, they are better prepared for this world than I am. Right? And that's why like a lot of elders, especially Black elders, if you talk to them, or even Native elders, are like, oh, okay, yeah, we know what this is, and we know, and who were clear-eyed, very clear-eyed, and didn't get confused by the disinformation campaign. They were like, oh no, we know who this person is, and we know the world that he's trying to build, and we're really clear on what he's trying to do, and you guys better learn. And so for me, it is being very aware of where we are, the limitations of how we've been acculturated, and leaning very, very, very heavily on the ways of being that have been dismissed. But one of the reasons why those ways of being were dismissed was because they were outside of control. And digital culture makes it very, very, very easy when you want to flip the switch to control people and control society. And so I'm very much relying on the things that are similar and dissimilar and figuring out how to mix them into a cocktail to figure out what to do next.
Life sucks. No. I don't know. I've been here a long, long time. I've seen this before. I've seen this in such an ugly way when my parents were my age and my grandparents were the elders, and growing up trans, growing up definitely different in the 60s, where most kids were outside getting dirty and playing football and doing all of that. I had on Jaffas in the front yard painting my nails clear. Everything looked different, but it looked particularly different because I grew up in between here, Bushwick and Park Slope. My parents lived here, which gave me a sense of family and also a smidge more danger than any place I could be in my life. And in Park Slope with my grandparents in Grand Army Plaza. No Black families owned anything in Grand Army Plaza. My grandparents did. They also were in entertainment. So it allowed for me to see a whole different side of what my dad would have wanted me to see, because he wanted me to be butch. And I tried. And when I started this work of helping people, it literally, I started this to pay them back. I started this shit because I was not gonna fail. And I realized that half of the shit in my earlier years that I did to myself was because of them. It wasn't because of me. It was all of their hate and discrimination, and that spiraled into my whole fucking life. And I worked for the worst agencies in the world. If they're LGBT, I probably worked for them, and they suck. At no point are any of them okay. They're trash. And that is what it is. The gay men's health crisis has never been friendly to a black trans woman. Why? Because it's still called gay men's health crisis. The center just upgraded to the center, but it was the gay and lesbian center for decades. These places we've never felt held. So why would we want them to hold us now? We're not on shit. We are your funding. Soon wiped away, but we are your funding. We're the reason why your offices still exist. We are the reasons why a lot of this new work and outreach and advocacy has changed, and you've gotten $1 million funding off the lives of black and trans people worldwide. We have become the funding source. How do we roll it back into reality? And that's the bottom line. We've seen the degradation. Some of us have come directly out of the bullshit. How do we be effectively making change in this world that wants to stump us into a hole? Well, here's the thing. We've been in a hole for a very long time. We have navigated the walls of holes. We have navigated the life of holes. We have been the people, we're like cockroaches. We've been around forever. We're not going anywhere. The fact that somebody wants to take away my gender marker, do you really want me in the bathroom with your wife or husband? Let's just tell the truth. Because if you want me in the men's room with the men, I can rally up some points here. I'll have security and we'll work it out. Because they're not going to touch me with them behind me. But, you know, the reality is I want to go to the bathroom where I want to go to the bathroom, and I don't want you to say a motherfucking thing. A long time ago, when I was volunteering, I went to a baseball game, Yankee Stadium, had to use the bathroom, looked at my brother and my counselors, and they said, what are you going to do? You're going to pee on yourself. And I said, no, the fuck, I'm not. Watch this. And I went to the women's room, and it was such an enlightening excursion. The bathroom was filthy. Never knew that. Always wanted to see the inside. Filthy, disgusting. But I was so honored going in. And I went in. And I navigated the toilets by standing over them and trying to pee quietly because I'm a lady. And of course I wasn't putting my ass on it. Shit, it was disgusting. But I thought about it, and I thought about, oh my God, this was such an achievement. I went to the bathroom in Yankee Stadium. And then I came out of the bathroom to the police that were waiting for me to come out of the bathroom because I went in the women's bathroom, and I said to the cops so graciously, would you like me to pee on your leg the next time? I ought to arrest you. And I said, I'm just making a joke, but in all reality, if I have to go to the bathroom, I'm not going to wait in a line. Whichever line is free, that's the one I'm going to. We have to make changes in this world that goes beyond bathrooms. We deserve, and I'm telling you, when this 4 years is up, we have demands. We have demands. Our 40 acres and a mule should start with housing, scholarships for school. I believe we all deserve free school, even my old ass. They owe us this shit. And we have to start building that blueprint now so our younger ones get free college. And y'all can have college. Because in 4 years, the blueprint is gonna be wiped clean. And we'll be able to effectively say songs about this man that will change history. If Dolly Parton's still living, I can't wait to hear what she'll sing about that wrinkled ass. We have to be intentional about showing up in Albany, going to your council person's office, and I'm a dick, but I'm being real here. Go into the council, your senator's office, and ask, who am I? Because if they can't answer that, then they can't fight for us. They can't work for us. I need a definition of what I am, is what you're asking them. And you're not asking them for us. You're asking them so they can have an idea of their niche market, because we will be their niche market. When this shit is over, they have no other ass. We are the backbone of everything. Hollywood, Broadway, science. We are the very fucking fashion. Trans women are in fashion now and happen to be paid very well. We are at the blueprint of change, of writing books, of creating, of building schools and building resources That's what this is about, because we need resources. We got 4 years without resources. I've been here before. I was here before we were trans. I don't know who the fuck gave us the word trans, but I preferred lady. That way it didn't fall into a gender spectrum. And I thought so. I honestly thought so. You know, if I'm a woman, I had to really, my grandmother said, well, any woman can be a woman. Not every woman can be a lady. And I said, wait. What are you saying? Talk to me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Talk to me. I needed that relationship, and I needed her to spell it out. I wanted to hear, break down the syllables. Say it slow. I wanted that kind of delivery because I wanted to hear, was she telling me to sustain as a faggot, because that's what they were calling me, or was she telling me to sustain because she dedicated her life to a young lady? And I was like, oh, I didn't see that coming. There was a lesson being taught by that old coot that I didn't see coming. But in all the discrimination I suffered at home, and this is what our kids are suffering, because of this man in office, our kids now are rolling back the hands of time of being scared, of being at home. So we gotta find a way to connect with them, how to get to them, how to save them. I'm getting so many messages from kids that want to kill themselves, parents that want to literally run with their kids to save their kids. I am one agency and one fucking person with 3 staff members. I'm losing my fucking mind. But at the same time, we're getting people on planes, boats, you name it. If I could get you here, and I started this in 2015. 2015, somebody called me just fucked up in the game in Africa. And I said, well, first of all, sweetie, don't call me at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm not pretty. Because they called me on video, and that's not nice. It's not nice. And they said, they're gonna kill me, they're gonna kill me. And I hung up the phone. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, for Christ's sakes. And the next day they called at 5 o'clock, a little better. But I had one eyelash on, I'm still cute. And I picked up the phone and I said, baby, what did I tell you? And then they said, Mom, I'm in Africa. And I said, okay, the fucking time. Okay, what is it? And she said, I'm really, really running for my life. And I can hear the people chasing her. Mm-hmm. And I tried to go back to sleep. You know, God is funny motherfucker. My bed broke down that fucking morning. Like one whole side collapsed and I rolled out of bed. And I said, okay, that was God telling me to get the fuck up and do something about this. And I got up and I made the biggest mistake in the world. I had her number and her name and her information. And I called the Ugandan government and I said, there's this trans woman who's in need of extraction. And they said, what is trans? And I said, oh no. And whoever was in the office, the secretary called me back and said, you cannot use that language. Here in Africa, they're a man. There's no trans, there's no gay, you cannot say any of that. I said, so how the fuck am I supposed to help you? She said, like I said, I've already said too much and hung up the phone. So in that 3 days, I had 3 days to figure this out. I called a college professor, got the college professor to write their name down on an agenda. I made the request to have them come up here and study at Berkeley in Manhattan and got them out of Africa. As soon as they got in JFK, we applied for asylum. And that started all of this off for me by helping somebody I did not even know. It was that simple. We all have the ability to help somebody we don't know. Why are we helping them? Because they look like us, because they sound like us, because they smell like us, because they sleep like us, because they work like us, because they live like us. That's why you help.
Absolutely. I'm going to come back to one thing that you just said, Ceyenne. You were talking about Dolly Parton. You were talking about your family being entertainers. I'm looking around the room, and I know there's a lot of artists in this room who are probably, at least I'll speak for myself, I'm thinking about how to make art in this time, what it means to be making art in this moment. And I'm curious if you have thoughts about that. I know you have, you think about, I'm thinking about places like 96 West and cabarets and like how you interface with art and culture and how that sustains and feeds the work that you're both doing.
She said your name. She didn't say my name.
You too.
I mean, really briefly, I think that like the duty of art in a time of like social closure, even more than other times, is to be truthful, and that's really hard. It's really hard, especially really hard when the truth is not pleasant, but that also creates space for beauty. And so I think that the purpose of creation right now is to be truthful, because we are also, through whatever we are doing, we're also creating a record of this time, right? We are memorializing this moment. If the work is either directly or indirectly or refracted off the shadow of what's happening, and we have a duty to do that, especially when there's so much energy in erasing history and erasing art, Erasure. At some point, there will be a movement, just like there is right now at universities. So, I don't know if you all saw today, the Trump administration came out with a rule that said, like, the Department of Education, that any university that receives any federal funding has 2 weeks to remove any program that is in any way about, racial justice. So any scholarship program that is in any way related to that, they want gone in 2 weeks. At some point, they're going to start doing that to museums, because a lot of museums receive federal funding, and through the National Endowment for the Arts. It's not that far away, for example. So there's going to be a huge push to erase trans artists, to erase Black artists, to not have shows which either reference the work of people or that exhibit that work in totality. So that means that there's going to be actually a necessity for that to be counteracted through through what we are able to create, or what people are able to create. So I think that for me, it's thinking about the truth. And second, when I think about, various like cabaret acts here in the United States, in New York, and also like Les Coquettes, for example, which was this like Brazilian queer kind of trans cabaret show that was really popular during the military dictatorship of Brazil. And one of the things that show did was it made a parody, it made a mockery, it undermined the idea of control through being subversive. So that's also a really important role of art and artistic expression right now, is to be subversive, is to undermine the idea that is trying to be put forth around control and regulation and division in an authoritarian regime. So in short, I think there's a lot of work for people who are artists and who have artistic skills in the full range, from performance art to writing books and poetry and painting, the full range, song. There's a lot of work for artists to do in a moment like this.
I'm gonna say some things that are not so nice. Fuck Stonewall. Stonewall ain't never liked my black ass. 3 years ago, I think it was 3 years ago, I was on the main stage. A lady from the UK had heard about me, never met her. She never met me, I never met her. Asked for me to be her last 5 minutes on the stage. And she introduced herself with her crew. It was all like taking a shit. And she introduced herself. They ran me and got me ready to go on stage. And what do I say in front of fucking hundreds of thousands of community members? But as I was getting ready to step on stage, inside Stonewall, they were throwing a young Black woman out for saying the names of all the dead trans people that were murdered that year. They were throwing her out for doing the very thing on Gay Pride she should have been allowed to do on that stage in Stonewall. And I said, this is odd, and now I got to get up here and blow smoke up people's asses. But that's not what I wanted to do. And we got to be intentional that these are the spaces that are going to be taking space away from us. Like I said, a lot of these big orgs that are still in the funding, they're getting in the funding right now because they're denying trans people. That's the only way that work can work. It is our job to infiltrate, to get in there, to make a muck, to stir the fucking pot. Because if you're still existing and still getting funding, then you have made an agreement, and that agreement is to remove trans people from that space. And the best way to do that is to promote that there's only gays and lesbians, basically man and woman, because that's what they're saying. That's basically what they're saying. We have to find a way to create in music, in art, like Leslie Lohman Theater, the Gay and Lesbian Museum. I don't know. We'll see how this year pans out on the next one. But we do have community spaces. We have nowadays, we have elsewhere. We have all these places where we can go and exhibit our art. Here, these are spaces where we're safe and we can have shows and we can bring people and we can teach. Universities, we'll see you in 4 years, but we cannot give up the game. We have to find a way to get in these universities, write a fabulous piece and then end it in trans. I'll go to jail for 3 days. Y'all don't take the blame. I can do it. I got muscles. But if we're not intentional and use our creativity to shift the narrative of the hate that's going on in this world, then we're not the Spengalis we say we are. We are, sweetie, everybody's lived off to the backbones of us. We became the new art when there was no art. We became the new design. We became the people that people want to look up to when they want to know how to do it. How do we succeed? How do we maintain? How do we walk? How do we walk with our head high as trans women? I've never walked with my head down, even when I was homeless. Even when I was down in the dirt, I had to stand by my own intuition and my own ground because I knew somewhere in this vessel, there was a lot to come out. I didn't know quite what. I knew sucking dick was a power. So I realized being a hoe was, amazing. But at my age, so I had to find something. And the something I found was the investment in us. That was the something. Did I really want to go to work in a corporate office? And no. Did I really want to fight about a bathroom in a corporate office? No. Or better yet, did I want to transition and lie to the world about who I am? How many of our artists have had to do that? Have sat there and said, I live stealth. Bitch, this is stealth. Living is stealth. Fuck all the rest of that shit. If you're going to go somewhere and hide, you're not the Mary or Jane or Joe you thought you was. Bottom line. So we have to be the people that shine the lights on each other. These spaces of creativity. Without a you, there will not be the word. Without me, there will not be lessons. We need your voices. We need you to sing. We need you to create. We are literally in the dipshit of oppression. We're looking at the tip of it. This is only the start. So how are we going to manifest the next 4 years of shifting this narrative and actually being like a seal? Whatever this little orange motherfucker got to say doesn't pertain to us. He probably, one of them kids is probably trans or something. I do think so. But that's not our job and it's not our problem. Our problem is to help our youth become better people and bigger people and seen people and heard people. This is what we need.
Yes. I remember what Terrell said earlier today, that this wasn't going to be a panel, and then it kind of turned into a panel. So we're going to open this up and take some questions from the audience. You don't have to raise your hand. You can just speak, or you can come in with a mic or something. I don't know. You can come up. This is informal. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like it's wide enough for people.
Yeah.
You can just stand up and say something.
I was like, were we that?
No one has anything to say?
I was like, we were that boring? We were that much
I know.
Oh, wait, one person.
Oh, there we are.
Young community leaders who are actually fearing for their lives but still fighting for our community, and at certain times want to turn away because often the visibility that we have can also be dangerous to our lives. And every time we show face, it's putting our lives on the line. So what motivation would you give young community leaders in that regard?
I should just know I'm always going to go first because Cayenne just always looks at me first. I mean, I think I would say a couple of things. One of the things when you said that, I thought about what Maya Angelou said, which was, I mean, you know, she said a great many things, but one of the things that sticks out in my mind is that courage is the most important of all of the virtues because it's the only way to practice the others consistently. So I think that like one of the things that we all have to do is to call ourselves to greater amount of courage. I think the second thing that I think about is the first rule of anyone is to survive. And so I think that you do whatever you need to do to survive first. And that may mean not always being at the very front of every march. It may not mean going to the march. It may mean helping to organize but not show up. Like, whatever you have to do to survive is what is necessary. At the same time, realizing that in this environment, that there's no such place as absolute safety. Right, it's kind of tricky. So like you have to also, but the most important thing is to pace yourself because like these battles, this contest is gonna be really long and really intense. And the most important thing is to endure over time because that's actually how you are able to have impact. Like if you go hot and burn out in 3 months, that's not as impactful as finding a way to sustain yourself over 3 years in doing the work. And there's a really long way to go. We are in week 4. It's 4 weeks. There's a really long way to go. And so the question is like, how do you live up to your values? How do you practice courage? How do you sustain yourself over the long haul? And the reason why I pose those as questions is because I think that all of the answers are highly individual. They're not going to be the same for anyone in this room, and they shouldn't be. So I think that it's really important for you to have that conversation with yourself, that conversation with the people that are around you about what does this look like for you and for you all, realizing the really contradictory nature of the time that we are in, and also the necessity to both show up and preserve yourself and try to have an impact in this really intense time. And the reason why I kind of pose it as a set of questions is because there are no easy answers. And there shouldn't be. And the fact that there are no easy answers is what actually calls us to deepen ourselves. And it is also very much consistent with being an artist.
Giovanna. A couple of months ago, I said in D.C., child, anytime you want, come up. And I don't say that loosely. I say it because in this work, we need to be able to get away in order to continue to work. And we always need to replenish. There's a reason why I travel, not only to meet community members all over the world, is so my light bulb can stay forever on. So in that advocacy world, in that world where I'm generating and exuding my love into community, that I'm getting replenished. So when I travel and I meet these kids from all over, they're inspiring me because they inspire themselves to do shit I've never seen done. I went to the Trans March in the UK last year, and it was fucking amazing. But I'd never seen, like here, we can't get our kids to get up and wash their asses and be accountable in this community. And in London, these little 13, 18, 14, 15 years old got the laws changed for trans kids. They went on top of a roof and chained themselves and had the law changed. And to sit in London and witness this happening as the TERFs were on the other side of the town ready to kill us all, here was these organized kids that said they were gonna do the thing of changing the bills in London, in the UK, so kids can have affirming surgeries. Can we get our kids to do that? And we're looking at this orange motherfucker. We have not ignited or set a fight like that. So when I say come, I mean come. And it may not have to be a group of 20 women, but we need to start making spaces to bring community in, to teach them, to guide them, to keep them invested in continuing this fight. It ain't easy. And I'm not gonna lie to you and say that this is all a wonderful thing doing this work. It is horrible. I cry a lot to myself. And I just got into therapy. Congratulate me, I've been doing this for 30 something years. It's not even easy for me to trust a therapist because I've had so much pain and hurt from my own, and fuck the gays and lesbians, I'm talking just transgender. I've had to fight for my life trying to save somebody else's life. So we can't say that every leader's good and powerful and wonderful, the almighty leaders, fuck all that shit. You find the advocate that works with you, that you can feel, that you can grow from, and the rest of the motherfuckers, leave them on the side. They're gonna be okay, they'll figure it out. But you have to find a way doing this work up there in Buffalo that literally you are putting yourself on the line because it's Buffalo. Because how many people are like you? How many people are loud and proud in doing the work to save somebody's life? That comes with a cautionary tale all the time. So whenever you need a Fall Safe, a Ceyenne, a Miss Major, a Sharon Gracie, these elders are your stackable resources. When you need to call somebody, all it takes is go, bitch, I'm on the road. And we'll find a way to work it out. I'll find a way to work it out. A lot of y'all don't know this. So all under here is ports and wires, and I'm hooked up to a lot of shit right now. And I changed clothes 3 times because none of my outfits looked right because I'm hooked up and I got tape and stitches and blood and the whole 9 yards. But I'm here because this is what a leader does. At this time, would it really be worth it for me to stay home and do what? Look at my dumbass dog? No, it's to
You
come
love your
out.
dog.
I love my big baby. It's for me to come. I do. He's a beast. It's good for me to get out, but it also we're at a time where somebody like you, who's doing this work, and really sees that it's not good. And I'm not gonna lie to y'all and tell y'all, oh, this is so sweet, it's fabulous. No, there's a side of this that looks all cushy and beautiful. That's not the bitch that wakes up every day. Because the bitch that wakes up every day doing this work is crying at least 3 or 4 times a day. trying to figure it out. You can't eat, you can't sleep because you're carrying the caseloads that a GMHC is not carrying, that a center is not carrying. Why? Our problems stretch beyond 9 to 5. Our poverty looks beyond 9 to 5. Our struggle looks beyond 9 to 5. So we have to figure out after 9 to 5 how to create resources for people that otherwise wouldn't have it. Most people that you know that are going through domestic violence, is it ever in the daytime when offices are open in the light of day, when people can save you? No, this shit is in the middle of the fucking night. And for our community, there is no emergency housing for that. So that is a Ceyenne, that is a Imari, that is a Giovanna. We have to be out here creating these spaces from phone call. Hey, we got a community. Can you go bust this door in and kick that boy's ass and get that girl up out of there? This is life-saving work. How many people answer that call? So yes, in this, you're gonna have to find your safeguards and rely on them. And even when you feel challenged, because the girls are hard, the boys are hard, but the girls are hard, make you want to walk around with a bulletproof vest. And we have to call it. We have to say that I'm not safe in these spaces. There's a reason why I don't go to balls. Balls are cute and all of that, but I like my common sense and my trajectory, and I don't like anybody behind me, and there's so many other reasons, but I need my space. And that generation, the ballroom generation, is not for me. It's for a lot of people. But all that noise is too much for me. I need to be out here saving lives. That I've dedicated my life to because that's what is substantial to me. When I get a kid that tells me, I just graduated Columbia University, I just graduated UCLA, do you know I get on a plane? All you got to do is tell me you ain't got nobody there. I get on a plane with a big B. Lily hat and I cry like I am your mother. Because I want you to know that you are received and that your education is just not for me, it's for all of us. You being a nurse, let me tell you, when you first told me that, I got wet. For two reasons. One, because if I ever needed the care, I could call you. How many people I know that look like me that are a registered nurse? But for the second reason, you're in the universe as a registered nurse, a black trans woman. That is iconic. So I got to give it up to say yes.
Any other questions?
You just said this about being that bitch so wakes up every morning and crying. How do you deal with not failing under everything you said so far, like the country gets us or whatever? How do you deal with failing like another trans woman? How do you specifically the person that you're supposed to be looking at for the most and not getting there because you don't have the resources and the money? How do you get by and live with yourself after that? Because I'm the beneficiary of so many great mother figures and I'm trying to be one to many younger trans women below me, but I haven't figured out how to do it yet, and I'm really not figuring out how to deal with failing either.
You're not failing. If you try, you're succeeding. You never think of it as failing. First of all, we're all individuals, we're humans. So don't think of you as failing them. In some way, they're gonna have to take accountability. Where did they fail themselves? When I was on drugs and I was out there, children, I had on 3 or 4 pair of pants just to look like I wore a size 30. And you could see my whole entire skeleton. My family did not see me for years, almost 2 decades. And it was me. It was my anger for them was ruthless. And I was out in the world helping people, but how many of my clients knew that I was a crackhead? They didn't. And I felt like I was just not making anything work or I felt like I was failing. And it took Flawless Sabrina to actually come and look for me at my job. I worked for the Department of Homeless, and she said, tell them you're taking a long lunch. And she took me out. She took me to Tracks. Remember Tracks? She took me to Tracks, and I said, girl, I can't be in here getting drunk and going back to work. Oh, they gonna get me. And she said, girl, have a couple of drinks. She said, why do you do this? And I said, because I want to be here. She said, what's eating you alive? I said, because I'm failing. They're still homeless. And she said, oh, sugar. If they got somebody like you as a case management, that's the window out. But you can't do that for them. They have to do that for themselves. And I had never looked at it like that. I looked like I was going to work every day. I was giving them the tools to go and get housing and get jobs, and they just wasn't doing it. So I wore it. I wore it like a badge. When my supervisors came down on me, it was because I was giving them Metro cards and I was doing the humane thing. It's a Metro card, for Christ's sake. But extending the olive branch for change, I felt like, and they would tell me, you are a waste. We don't even know why we're paying you. Guess what? Half those people that I helped back then are now CEOs, run their own businesses, are thriving in their transness, in their excellence. This is, you never look at you as the individual, as the person creating that blueprint. No, you're never failing. Anytime you can get somebody to recognize what's on the other side of that mirror, that's the real reality. You're just the vessel to help push them. The failure's all on them. It's not on you. And don't you ever wear that hat. You tell the girls, you tell the children as you're guiding them, bitch, this is an olive branch this big. If you want it to grow, you got to do better for yourself. That's how you're not going to teach a lesson if you keep just turning a cheek and say, oh, it'll be okay. No. And if they ever tell you you're failing, tell them to go fuck themselves, because you are helping them succeed. See tomorrow. Guidance doesn't come easy in this community. Too much?
You knew what we were doing in my time. Anybody else? Don't be shy.
It's hot as Betty Shabazz in here.
Oh, one question.
Go ahead.
I have a question about your sense of possibility. Like what? Like we're gonna fight like hell? Fighting like hell? You've all been fighting like hell forever. Like, is there something?
I think we could start with dismantling our First Lady, who happens to be a shit on life. Yeah, has she ever really did anything since he was in office before? We have to call a calling card what it is. She was a hoe, and we must use that to our defense. What was she? She was a hoe. I know what her vagina looked like. Has anybody seen Michelle Obama's vagina? One of the Kennedys' vagina. Yeah, Barack Obama. But we know what our First Lady from this man's vagina looks like. And it was lackluster. There was no, if I was a lesbian, I'd probably go, she looks boring. But I think our sense of possibility starts with us. It starts with every day that, I know sometimes I don't want to get out of bed, but the joy I feel when I am up usually takes a couple of minutes for the sun to stop looking so bright and the world to look different. But the real joy and love is just being alive, just waking up and saying, my God, I'm here. And regardless of what's going on, I'm still fucking here. That's Miss Major's tagline. And we are all still fucking here. We're gonna be here. We're gonna be the possibilities that nobody's ever seen. We're going to love on our youth, and we're gonna teach them and help them succeed and just push them into the universe, so they're kicking ass for the next 4 years, and me and you can go and have tea in France. It'll be so good.
Anytime, seriously. I'm gonna ask you a question since we get to create a conversation. I'm asking what's driving you to ask that. What do you, when you...
Well, Mar, I know you, and I've never,
Can you stand up?
oh, yeah.
So we can hear you?
I've never not taken something away from your vision, and I think what you said about just the many people who've lived in history and who fought in their own way and lived their own lives, like, and managed to be in their transness in the 70s, you know, for as long as history people have existed. And that sense of possibility really meant something to me. It means something to me. And I love the idea that there's possibility in tomorrow. And so we'll keep pushing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just really briefly, I think that, you know, the only way though sometimes the only way to have your possibility is to survive, and sometimes the way to survive, sometimes you have to fight to survive, right? Like, you know that. So like, the whole thing is that like, that has to be something, I don't know how to make that shift, but like sometimes for some people that's very daunting and depressing, right? But at the same time, it's also an essential ingredient because the people that are targeting our community are not going to let up. They're not going to stop.
I think of possibility, let me grab this. I think of possibility just creating for our community. When Cecilia died, I lost my shit. Yeah. I'm not gonna tell y'all I was anywhere close to being a nice person. I was a bitch. And I was okay with it. If there was one time I had ownership in me being a complete dick, it was definitely that time. But while everybody was screaming and hollering and doing all of that, I was on the phone trying to figure out how can we have this iconic, beautiful, fabulous funeral for my sister. And everybody else was like going through the mourning thing, and I was like, I'm not leaving here until I have a venue. Like, I got on the phone and I did the work of working really, really, really fucking quick. And, you know, of course, I said who I was when I called St. Patrick's, and they quickly told me they didn't want to hear from me. So I said, oh. So I called my undertaker and I said, listen, I need you to do me a favor. You make that call. And he said, stay on the line. And he made the call, and it was done within 15 minutes. And they said they wanted $2,500. And I called my boys and I said, give them the money right now before this shit hits the fan. And I knew in that moment of creating that what we were doing was going to change the scale. You can't erase Cecilia Gentili's funeral. It is burnt in history. So much for making trans people go away. The other thing was that it was so beautiful. Her wake, her gown, the theatrical deliverance of her whole entire going home service was locked up in this fucking head. And, you know, there were arguments, many arguments. People were arguing with me back and forth. Oh, my God, you want to take control? I said, no, I want to make sure that this doesn't turn into a shit show. So I had made demands. Nobody touched the mic. The mic is mine. You touch it, I smack you. Also that this is done in a light where everybody's allowed to speak and share their feelings, but also it's not so heavy that we have people walking out the door trying to kill themselves. So how do we honor our own and build our own? It was that sense of possibility. If it could be possible to do this in such a fucking way where it would go down in history. And guess what? That morning, when I was cussing out the limo driver, and I was cussing him out, you motherfucker, my girlfriend's in front of the fucking church and we're not there yet. You bald-headed freak. And I was going through it all. And he was laughing at me. You thought this motherfucker would have been mad at me, but he was laughing at me. And we were like on the block, but the block was hemmed up, and I was like, what the fuck is going on here? And the driver just looked in the mirror. He said, you did this. And I said, you're an asshole. And he said, do you want to get out the car and run? And I looked in the window. He said, oh, no. I knew that wasn't going to work. I said, no, you take me right to the door. And when we got out, and I ran up the stairs, my friends got my mom loves Cecilia, and the doors opened. Everything went away. All my anger, all my anxiety, all of it went away. Like, I was evil. I was mad at the fucking world. I cried that whole morning. Every time they put eyelashes on me, they just fell off. And it was hard to fathom that my sister, somebody that I could curse out at any time of the night, I didn't know that she was 53 until she was 53. She kept calling me, you old bat. Well, guess what? I am the old bat. I'm 60. I just didn't think she was 53. And, all of it was going through my head. And as I'm walking down the aisle, I'm seeing the possibilities of us. What we seen that day was hundreds, if not thousands of people showed up for one Latina woman that cared about us all. That's possibility. That we filled that space, as they said, and the Pope said, we put our sinning asses in their seats. I wish I had guests that day. I would have liked to leave them a little more, but I tried. But you look at the iconicness of how we could show up for community members. I don't necessarily like Billy Porter. And she gets on my nerves a little. But to have Billy Porter sing for Cecilia Gentili at her funeral, even though he dressed like Little Abner that morning. But that's me. That's me. That's all on me. I'm a fashionista. I was a little disgusted by the farmers, but we got pluses. We got possibilities that day. We had a little baby that sang Ave Cecilia and did ballet all around the casket. That's iconic. So we have the possibility to do some amazing shit, to show up these next 4 years. We need our allies to do some real stupid shit in these 4 years. Yes, go to jail for my black ass. Yeah, please. And we need resources. We need, to be honest, and I'm not gonna lie here, we need a couple of big spaces to partner with acupuncturists, therapists and stuff, and get our community in the summer the fuck out of New York. Not have to pay for it. You pack your food, you pack your towels, your sheets, your blanket. Not sleeping on the ground in Tennessee, but an actual place where you have beds and you have running water and bathrooms, because we need it. We need spaces where we're gonna be okay. And we need running water is important for my punani, okay? I'm gonna need y'all to, and that's our possibilities that we look for. I'm looking for land right now with Sid and Katia, because I want us to have a place not only for our youth, but for us. I'm sorry, fuck the kids. I need it for my own fucking self. But we need it for ourselves because we need to get away. We need to figure out what it's like to, even if it's for 4 days. My God, what a 4-day difference could do. Yeah, we'll kick and scream driving back to New York, but 4 days is a lifetime. Just 4 days of peace. What that could mean to each of us. 4 days of being away from our bosses, our partners, or whatever. But the possibilities. What you ask for is not hard, but we have to see event and create our possibilities so we can see tomorrow as a possibility when politics right now is trying to take away all possibilities for everybody, not just undocumented, all of us.
This feels like a really beautiful place to end. I used to feel like kind of possibilities. Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you so much.
Gracias.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Our little song on TRANSA was really just an excuse to have you both speak. So this is really kind of like the ideal culmination of everything. So thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Nelson?
Can we take pictures? I'm old and I need to remember this shit.
Yes, pictures are being taken. I just want to could we get more of a round of applause?
Thank you. Thank you.